Please bring back some form of Fixie Points. Fixie Points, please. Please bring back some way for us, your loyal subscribers, to send in pics of our bikes and you showcasing them. Please. Is Zim Saddle? You a fan of the idea of opening up your legs more? Well, that's another question entirely. Also, Fixie Points, heart. It looks like in this Fix Gear Q&A we're going to talk about the potential return of Fixie Points, the pricing on Dosnoventa, plus more coming up. For the most fun that I've had on a bike, check out our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles, linked at the top of the description. What's up? I'm Gallardo. Life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous and subscribe for more Fix Gear videos just like this one. So a lot of you are asking about Fixie Points and will Fixie Points be returning? And at this point, you guys have asked so much in every single Q&A thread, and those have been the most upvoted comments, and Fixie Points was the most watched series on my channel. I am considering bringing it back. Now, of course, I have a lot to think about because I felt pretty confident discontinuing Fixie Points because it just took a lot to produce. I'll have to restructure it in some way, and also just roasting people, even though it was for a joke, it just kind of put me in a bad state of mind where I wasn't very productive or happy. So those are two issues that I have to work out, but I will definitely consider bringing back Fixie Points. How do you know if your frame is too big? I think that top tube length is way more important than seat tube length because you can only extend or shorten a stem so long, but you have a lot of variability with the seat post. The seat tube is also useful though, and you can tell if it's too big, obviously, if you don't feel like you can lower your seat post enough. If that's the case, you may feel some pain in your Achilles tendon or in your knees. And if your top tube is too long, you may feel some pain in your shoulders and in your neck. But to find the correct size bike for you, a good resource is the Competitive Cyclist Bike Fit Calculator. Take those measurements, write them down so you always have them, and you'll always know what your bike size is. Any suggestions on sturdy, durable 700C wheel sets for heavy riders? Talking 100 more than 100 kilos and lots of potholes. The one wheel set that immediately comes to mind is the super durable, really heavy though, Velocity Chuckers. These come in up to 48 holes, I believe. And even if you're 220 pounds on 100 kilos, even this might be a bit overkill. These things are made for bike polo and for fixed gear freestyle. But as a general rule of thumb, you want to look for wheels with more spokes. Heavier wheel is going to be more durable, and there's not really a way around that. Some other good wheels are the Velocity Deep V, if you can get those with 36 spokes, or if you want a bit more beef, if you can find Velocity B43s, they've been discontinued, those are another great Clydesdale option. When do I know if I need to replace a chainring and cog? How can I recognize used teeth? When you start to feel a lot of unevenness in chain tension throughout your pedal stroke, this means that your chainring and cog aren't perfectly round. And if there's a huge variance between the tightest spot and the loosest spot, it's time to replace your chain because that could lead to a dropped chain. When all the teeth are shark finned, that's when I will replace my chainring and cog. It really has to do with a mix of how smooth that the drivetrain components feel and also how bad do they look. With chain stretch, it can be a little bit more scientific. Park Tool does make a tool that you can sit inside your chain and it can measure your chain lengths and how much stretch there is and tell you whether you need to replace your chain or not. If you're interested in that, link is in the description. Do you ever plan on racing or doing a video about bike races? I did do a beginner track racing class, and while it was fun, it's just not really for me. I more so enjoy riding myself crazy long distances or riding out with a group of friends and getting something to eat. What do you think would be a good gear ratio for touring and distance riding on single speed? What ratio is good for climbing and dealing with headwinds? Proper gearing on a fixed gear is very personal, has to do with your level of fitness and your preferred riding style. But with that said, you didn't come here for that, and I would think that 4818 is good enough for most terrains for most people. The last time that I rode to and around the very hilly East Bay area here in California, I was on a 48-17 ratio with 38C tires, and I found that while it was a little heavy for some of the steeper climbs, it was perfectly adequate. Finding the proper gear ratio is a balancing act of being able to get up steep hills while also being comfortable and having a good enough speed on the flats. And 48-18 with 38C tires, even if the gearing is a little larger than with skinnier tires, I think is a good place to start. What's your opinion on the number 22 Little Wing? been thinking of building that as my ultimate bike using the frame sets. If not that frame, what would you use? I think number 22 and all of their titanium bikes are really amazing works of art. But even if money was no object, I don't think that I would ride one myself because they're a bit too flashy to me. The thing about like dream bikes though is that I am already perfectly happy on my current bike, and there's nothing really more than I want than it because it's just perfect for my needs. So I'd ride my Wabi Special. Why are Dosnoventa frames so overly priced? Now, when looking at Dosnoventa frames, it's easy to write them off as overpriced, but when you take a deeper look, the answer isn't as clear-cut. I would say that Dosnoventa is priced the way they are because of mainly two factors. Number one, they are hand-built in Italy. Hand-making bikes is an expensive process, and Italian labor also expensive. And with anything, regardless of whether it's bikes or cell phones or cars, volume is also largely going to affect the final price. And with Dosnoventa, because they are handmade in Italy, they can produce a huge volume as compared to something, say, the Kilo TT or even a Cinelli. That's why they are more expensive than most of their competition. Would you recommend buying more and more expensive bikes over time, or just save up to go from your first Fixie to, let's say, a bike like the Wabi Special? It just heads out of the Wabi Special and it's like, sell out. That really depends on how much you think you're going to cycle over the next 5 to 10 years. If you think you're going to cycle a lot, then I would say just get a nice bike at the very beginning. But if fixie or cycling is something that you want to try out, I think it's a good idea to start off with something more basic, develop your tastes, and then go for something more expensive. In the long run though, more bikes is more potential money lost, but it is less risk. I would suggest get a basic bike, see how you like fixed gear riding if you're on a tight budget, and then go for a really nice bike like a Wabi Special. If you have the money though, it is a better idea to just get a nice bike up front. It simplifies the whole process. You're likely to develop a liking for cycling a lot more. You're likely to use that nice bike a lot more than just a basic one. And also the end point is the same. Really depends on your budget as always and how much you think you're going to use a bike. Speaking of the Wabi Special, our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles has lightweight bikes with a buttery smooth, lively ride quality that only top shelf steel can bring. It's honestly the nicest riding bike that I've ever ridden, and that makes it pretty easy for me to ride Wallace, my Wabi Special, as my daily bike. Wabis are spec'd with no-nonsense, high-performing components, and even a bike snob such as myself can't bring myself to upgrade the stock end-all cranks to my favorite cranks, the Sugino 75s, because honestly, they ride just as nicely as Sugino 75s. So if you're looking for your end-all be-all fixed gear for street riding, consider checking out our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles, linked at the top of the description. What do you think about listening to music or audiobooks while riding? I won't do it if I'm in a suburban area or in a city because situational awareness is very important to not get hit by a car, especially when riding brakeless. If you're riding somewhere where there's a good amount of traffic, it's unreasonably dangerous to be situationally unaware. When I do longer rides though, like out in the country where there's horses and cows and goats or whatever, sometimes I do like to throw an audiobook into my right ear just to help me not want to turn back and go home. I recommend that you don't do it if there's a lot of cars where you're riding, but if you're going to do it, be smart about it. I'm looking to replace my old Nash bar with a TT. I like the color options much on the standard TT. Would it be dumb to buy a standard TT over a TT Pro because of the color, or are they similar enough that it's not that big of a deal? This seems like a silly question, but I have been there. I actually built up my Nature Boy instead of just buying a Wabi because I liked the color a lot better. And speaking from experience, I would say go with the better bike over getting a nicer color. It really comes down to the level of enjoyment that you'll think you'll get from a color that you like on a lower spec bike versus a color that you don't like as much on a higher spec bike. And when it comes to the Kilo TT versus the Kilo TT Pro, the Kilo TT Pro is way better than the standard Kilo TT. Just the components all around that you get for $50 more is always worth it. So even though you might not like the colors as much on the Kilo TT Pro, I say get a Kilo TT. If you find that you can't live with the color for whatever reason, go on and paint it yourself or bring it to a professional to paint it. As long as you enjoy your bike and ride it, that is what is important. Opinions on the Dodici Special versus the Cinelli Mash. While Cinelli Mashes are really cool bikes, a lot of people got them. Dodici Special, is actually special. Opinions on chainring BCD adapter. I didn't even know that this was a thing, and it seems sketch to me or just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It is more economical than replacing your crankset if you want to switch between BCDs. It's a lot quicker too, maybe. Does sound like there's a lot of fiddling. But if you're conscious at all about how your bike rides and what components that you put on your bike, just do the proper thing and use the proper components. Thoughts on Unknown Bike Co. I just recently watched a video on one of Unknown's new bikes. Wow, does City Grounds not even carry Unknown anymore? Oh, ooh. Really? City Grounds has standards now. Okay. So I just recently watched a video on the new Unknown Pulse, and if I'm being honest, I was laughing a lot throughout that entire video. Just the choices that they make clearly for aesthetic purposes and just to look cool are just everywhere throughout their frame sets. It just looks like very little consideration goes into the dimensions of the tubes and how they affect ride quality and weight. I mean, if you look at this Unknown Pulse's bottom bracket area that supposedly makes it stiffer and more aero, that defenders will say, it just looks so unbalanced and weird. And the top tube, it goes through the seat tube for some reason, and it's got a little dingle-dangle with like a EKG monitor sign on it. And it's so fixie that I find it funny. Other than what I can see from photos and videos, Unknown bikes are a relative unknown to me, and I'd like to keep it that way. How does the Specialized Langster Complete look? Is it a good buy? How does it look? I would describe the Specialized Langster as a track bike for roadies. A roadie wants to get into track, you know you ride a Specialized already, you know that Specialized generally makes good bikes, you don't care about money too much for your bikes, so you go out and plop down 700, I don't even know how much this is, 650 bucks on a pretty entry-level track bike. And to a roadie who really likes Specialized, that might sound like a fine deal, but this thing is pretty basic. If you spend that same $650 on something like a Dolan Precursor, you'll get a lot more bike for the money. So it's fine if you like Specialized and you're willing to pay that extra premium to have a Specialized. Would you recommend mountain bike cleats on Fixie? Mountain bike cleats is a pretty big category, so some will be better than others. For example, I use Time Attack cleats on my own fixed gear, and I would not recommend using them if you're riding brakeless. Do as I say, not as I do. Reason being, with Time Attack cleats, the cleats tend to wear down pretty quickly because they are made of brass, and when they do wear down enough, if you pull up hard enough, like mid-skid, you can pop a foot out. Not good. Shimano's clipless mountain bike system, on the other hand, is better because you can adjust the tension of your pedals. So as your cleats wear down, and the cleats are more durable so they won't wear down as fast, you can tighten down the springs on your pedals so you don't accidentally unclip. And then there's egg beaters, which are probably the third most popular. I personally would never use egg beaters on a fixed gear because they can disengage by clipping outward, but also by clipping inward. So when you're on a fixed gear and you're backpedaling, you have to be very diligent about keeping your feet perfectly straight as to not accidentally disengage. Shimano's or anything with a single disengagement point with adjustable springs are the best. I have an unreasonable attachment to my Time Attack cleats, even though they are not great for fixed gear riding, and stay away from egg beaters. What do you see fixed gear scene going in the future? Is it declining or stabilizing as a genuine category of cycling? It already is a genuine category of cycling. There's more choices for fixed gears now than ever before. But of course, it's not as popular as it used to be. It really did spike in 2010 to 2012, and that's when the trend really took a nosedive. As far as the future goes, I think as with anything, it will increase and decrease over time. And as far as whether it will get back to that initial spike, I think it's going to be a really long time until it does. These fads like this happen in generations, and sometimes they don't ever occur again. But just because it's not going to be as big as it used to be, doesn't mean it's not worth your time. If it wasn't, I would be out of a job. That's it for January's Fixed Gear Q&A. If you want to have your question featured, make sure you got a good fixed gear question, and look out for the YouTube post on the community tab at the end of the month. Stop watching me ride now if you haven't ridden your bike yet, and instead go out and ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous, even if it is just on the rollers.